Hello, denizens. Here we go again with my TV Guide Fall Preview Show, voted your favorite segment on my channel. This time I'm diving into Fall Preview 1983, just a mere 1 year after 1982, which makes sense if you know calculus. But with today's educational system in such a shambles, I'm not taking any chances. 1982 was a watershed year for iconic shows: Cheers, Knight Rider, Family Ties, Newhart. So how do you think 1983 is going to do? Clearly, the networks have nailed down how to make great shows. But like always, let's start off with the most important news events that took place in 1983. According to me. On January 1st, the migration of ARPANET to TCP/IP was completed, heralding the beginning of the true Internet. Giovanni Vigliotto goes on trial on charges of polygamy involving 105 women. The Ash Wednesday bushfires in Victoria and South Australia claim the lives of 75 people. The 3D printer is invented by Chuck Hull. The Space Shuttle Challenger is launched on its maiden voyage. Britain's Conservative government, led by Margaret Thatcher, is re-elected by a landslide. India wins the Cricket World Cup. Nintendo's family computer, also known as the Famicom, goes on sale in Japan. British entrepreneur Richard Noble sets a new land speed record of 633.46 miles per hour. That was 600 miles per hour faster than my Chevy Vega going downhill. The world's first commercial mobile cellular telephone call is made in Chicago. Word processor software multi-tool Word, soon to become Microsoft Word, is released. Australian Dick Smith completes his solo circumnavigation of the world in a helicopter. And there you go, denizens. And now on to TV Guide's Fall Preview 1983. Aftermash, CBS. The Korean War is ended. Colonel Potter, Sergeant Klinger, and Father Mulcahy find themselves together once again. This time at a veterans hospital, starring Harry Morgan, Jamie Farr, William Christopher, Rosalind Chow, and Brandis Kemp. Lasted 1.5 seasons. Sample episode. Soon Lee wants to get a job so she can bring her family to America. Father Mulcahy scrambles to finish his monthly report. Colonel Potter tries to find information about a vet who came in without identification. Aftermash had to solve two things very quickly. At the end of MASH, Klinger decided to stay in Korea. In Aftermash, he was suddenly home, and Father Mulcahy was left deaf and an alcoholic. In episode 1, he got his hearing fixed, which also cured him of his alcoholism. Lucky. My recollection was that it was a very forced show. It did okay in year 1, 15th out of 101 network shows, so CBS moved it opposite the A-Team. And you had to pity the fool as it plummeted to 72 out of 77 and was canceled 9 shows later. Bay City Blues, NBC. Bay City Blues centers on a Bay City, California minor league baseball team, the Bluebirds. Players varied from young hopefuls to once great players who were sent to the minors before retirement. Storylines revolve around the players' lives, loves, and problems. Starring Michael Nouri, Pat Corley, Perry Lang, Michelle Green, Dennis Franz, Sharon Stone, and tons more. But it doesn't matter, because it was pulled from the rotation after only 4 of the 8 episodes shot. From the same people that gave us Hill Street Blues, Stephen Bochco and MTM, it was messy, big, and expensive, and was slotted against Heart to Heart. But to be yanked after 4 shows, the network knew this was a stinker from the start. Boone, NBC. In 1953, Boone Sawyer dreams of becoming a country music star, but his father has other ideas for his future. Starring Thomas Bird, Greg Webb, Elizabeth Huddle-Nyberg, Catherine Moffat, and Amanda Patterson. Lasted 1 year. The show was created by Earl Hamner Jr. It was a country music Elvis meets the Waltons kind of show. And considering that Earl Hamner Jr. created the Waltons, that kind of makes sense. Cutter to Houston, CBS. The cases of the staff of Cutter Community Hospital in the small rural community of Cutter, Texas. Starring Jim Meltzer, Alec Baldwin, and Shelley Hack. Lasted 9 episodes. Apart from Alec Baldwin, who apparently did not shoot anyone during filming, there is nothing much more to add. Emerald Point, N.A.S., CBS. An American primetime soap opera created by Dynasty's Richard and Esther Shapiro, featuring the lives and trials of the staff and civilian residents of a U.S. naval base. Starring Dennis Weaver, Maude Adams, Jill St. John, Andrew Stevens, Sella Ward, Richard Dean Anderson, Susan Day, and many others. Lasted 1 season. Dennis Weaver was a super popular TV star. Lots of female star power and eye candy. Featured up-and-comers Richard Dean Anderson and Susan Day. Great production pedigree, but still didn't work. For Love and Honor, NBC. Fort Geller, Texas, is training center for paratroopers with instructors China Bell and more lenient Eugene Allard, molding diverse recruits into a unit. Their captain is racist Stephen Wiechek, whose adulterous wife Phyllis drinks excessively. Starring Cliff Potts, Yaphet Kotto, Shelley Smith, Kerry Grubbs, Rachel Ticotin, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Kelly Preston, and many more. Lasted half a season. Good cast. Do not remember this show at all. Hardcastle and McCormick, ABC. Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Milton C. Hardcastle is an eccentric judge notorious for being strict with the law in both his duties and towards defendants. Preparing for his retirement, he notices file drawers filled with 200 people who escaped conviction due to legal technicalities. Mark McCormick, a racing motorist convicted for robbery, was Hardcastle's last case. McCormick was placed under supervision of Hardcastle, and they start to inspect the 200 cases that were never closed totally. Starring Brian Keith and Daniel Hugh Kelly. Lasted 3 seasons. Sample episode. A convict escapes from prison and takes the warden's wife with him, but is she his hostage or accomplice? He then calls Hardcastle, who's shocked to hear from him. He then goes after him with McCormick, but without telling him how he knows the man and what he is after. Another Stephen J. Cannell series, who also gave us The Rockford Files and The A-Team. My fondest memory of the show was the Manta Montage kit car. Hotel, ABC. A primetime soap opera featuring the misadventures of the staff and guests of the St. Gregory Hotel. Starring James Brolin, Connie Sellecca, Nathan Cook, Sherry Belafonte, and Ann Baxter. Lasted 5 seasons. Okay, I'm not going to give you a synopsis for this hardcore soap opera based on the Arthur Haley 1965 novel. It was an Aaron Spelling show, so it had that horrible Love Boat-style static directing, but a great cast. Betty Davis was actually in the show for its first year, got ill, and was replaced, ironically, by Ann Baxter, who, as Eve Harrington in the movie All About Eve, replaced Bette Davis. It's not easy. ABC. Jack and Sharon are a divorced couple. Sharon has remarried Neil. Jack and Sharon have decided to live across the street from each other for the sake of their children, Carol and Johnny. Jack and Neil don't like each other. Jack's mother, Ruth, lives with him. Starring Ken Howard, Carlene Watkins, Billy Jane, Rachel Jacobs, Evan Cohen, Jane Meadows, and Bert Convey, lasted 11 episodes.
Sample episode. Sharon's grandmother is coming to visit, but she's unaware that her granddaughter has a different husband. Sharon fears her disapproval, so she talks Jack into pretending to still be her husband to disastrous results. I can't follow it either. Ken Howard was another likable actor that the networks kept trying to build shows around. Jane Meadows was good with the quips.
Jennifer slept here. NBC. The Elliots are a rich family that has just moved into the home of the late screen legend Jennifer Farrell. But Jennifer is still around as a ghost that only their son Joey can see. Starring Ann Gillian, John P. Navin Jr., Brandon Maggart, Georgia Engel, and Glenn Scarparelli. Lasted 13 episodes.
Sample episode. Joey's father wants to auction off a nude photo of Jennifer. Woo-hoo. Now, that is a very descriptive episode logline. I watched this show because of Ann Gillian, who I thought was extremely attractive, and the premise of the show, which was extremely dumb. The sexy ghost and the 14-year-old boy thing was kind of creepy. The show is basically an updated version of Topper, one of my all-time favorite movies as a kid.
Just Our Luck, ABC. Keith Burrows is a young TV weatherman working at KPOX-TV in Venice, California. One day while jogging on the boardwalk, he passes a flea market and bumps into one of the tables, causing an old green bottle to fall off and crack. Burrows is forced to buy the bottle and brings it home with him. Later that night, his cat breaks the bottle open and releases Shabu, a 3,000-year-old genie. Starring T.K. Carter, Richard Gilliand, Ellen Maxted, Ron McCary, and Richard Shaw. Lasted 12 episodes.
Sample episode. Shabu clones himself in a vocal quartet in order to enter a talent contest and win money so Keith can go on vacation. The show was panned by critics, obviously, and compared to I Dream of Jeannie. Still, I love the high-concept shows the networks attempted into the 80s.
Lottery. ABC. Each week, Patrick Sean Flaherty tracks down the different lucky winners of the Intersweep Lottery. Eric Rush of the IRS tags along to make sure that Uncle Sam gets his share. The stories center around ordinary people who suddenly become millionaires and how it changes their lives. Starring Marshall Colt and Ben Murphy. Lasted 17 episodes. Next. Manimal. NBC. Jonathan Chase was a British college professor at New York University who had the unusual ability to transform into any kind of animal. He used his powers to battle crime alongside pretty policewoman Brooke and Vietnam veteran pal Ty. Starring Simon McCorkindale, Melody Anderson, Rennie Santoni, and Michael D. Roberts. Lasted 8 episodes.
Normally, I don't give sample synopses for failed shows, but come on. This was Manimal, the greatest show name ever. Jonathan Brooke and Ty are at the beach with a seaman and his grandson. They find a skeleton. It's quite obvious the person was killed by boomerang that struck the head, which was embedded in it, and the person was holding a scrimshaw. They notice something carved into it, which is quite obviously a map. So they try to find out who the victim is and who the killer is. In the meantime, the seaman is keeping something from them. Yes, of course, it was a Glenn Larson show. All I can say is, even when they were a massive, stupid failure, this is why I loved network TV.
Mr. Smith, NBC. Mr. Smith is a talking orangutan with an IQ of 256 that works as a political advisor in Washington, D.C. Only a small number of people know Mr. Smith's secret, so while Mr. Smith is trying to solve any number of political problems, his friends are trying to keep his profile low. Starring Leonard Fry, Tim Dunnigan, Terry Garber, Laura Jacoby, Stuart Margolin, and Ed Weinberger. Lasted 10 years. No, of course not. Ran out of bananas after only 13 episodes. Oh, Madeline, ABC. Madeline Wayne craves excitement in her mundane life, leading her to try every fad, dragging her friend Doris along. Her husband, Charlie, a romance novelist, watches things unfold with his buddy Robert, Doris's ex. Starring Madeline Kahn, James Sloyan, Louis Giambalvo, and Jesse Wells. Lasted 1 season.
Sample episode. Health-conscious Madeline makes a bet with her junk food-loving husband Charlie that he can't go 24 hours on a health food diet. Another attempt at trying to get the hugely talented and funny Madeline Kahn into a show that would highlight her skills. This was not it.
The Rousters, NBC. Wyatt Earp III is a bouncer for a small carnival which travels from town to town. He also works as a bounty hunter to keep his family's law enforcement legacy alive. Starring Chad Everett, Jim Varney, Mimi Rogers, Maxine Stewart, Timothy Gibbs, and Hoyt Axton. Lasted half a season. This was a horrible show. Next. Scarecrow and Mrs. King, CBS. Homemaker Mrs. King is handed a package by a secret agent who is being pursued by bad guys. The secret agent, Lee Stetson, must then track down the homemaker before the bad guys do. Later episodes involve similar plots as Stetson and Mrs. King are teamed up together. Starring Kate Jackson, Bruce Boxleitner, Beverly Garland, Mel Stewart, and Martha Smith. Lasted 4 seasons.
When you thought the premises could not get any sillier, this show became a hit. I would attribute it to the chemistry between Jackson and Boxleitner. Scarecrow and Mrs. King finished both the 1983 to 1984 and 1984 to 1985 seasons as the 20th most watched program on television. For the 1986 to 87 season, CBS moved the series from Mondays to Friday nights, and the rating slipped to 41st place. Despite being higher rated than some renewed series, Simon & Simon and The Twilight Zone, CBS chose to cancel it. You just can't win.
Trauma Center, ABC. The cases of a hospital special emergency department for immediate life-threatening injuries and the paramedics supporting it in the field. Starring James Naughton, Jack Bannon, Lou Ferrigno, Wendy Malick, Jane Modine, and lots more. Lasted half a season. The show was originally going to be called MedStar, but was changed to Trauma Center. Fat lot of good that did. Webster, ABC. The post-retirement season is suddenly disrupted for football player George Papadopoulos and his wife Catherine when Webster, the orphaned son of a former teammate, moves in. Starring Emmanuel Lewis, Alex Karras, and Susan Clark. Lasted 6 seasons.
Sample episode. When Catherine and George go to a banquet in fancy clothes, Webster believes they won't come back. He tells Jerry, his babysitter, that his parents were dressed that way the night they left and didn't come back. When Catherine and George do come back, they learn that no one on the football team told him his parents died, and he didn't go to their funeral. So they must explain to Webster that his parents are not just away. This was a shockingly good show that dealt with some very tough topics. it's not a show a lot of people talk about now. It's funny that. There were obvious comparisons drawn with the different strokes. This was the better show. Though real-life married couple Karis and Clark fought bitterly with ABC to not make every show about Webster.
We got it made, NBC. Two Manhattan bachelors, neat freak attorney David Tucker and unkempt salesman Jay Bostwick decide to hire a housemaid. Enter Mickey McKenzie, a stunningly beautiful 20-something woman. Despite the fact that Mickey had no previous housekeeping experience, David and Jay hire her on the spot. Starring Terry Copley, Tom Villard, Bonnie Urseth, Matt McCoy, Stephanie Kramer. Lasted 2 years on NBC and another 2 in original syndication. Whiz Kids, CBS. Richie, Ham, Jeremy, and Alice are teenagers living outside Los Angeles. They are also computer hackers who work as amateur detectives in their spare time. Llewellyn Farley is a reporter who is a source for the kids and sometimes asks them for help on stories he is writing. Farley's brother-in-law is Lieutenant Quinn, who is also in on the action. Starring Matthew Labiorto, Todd Porter, Jeffrey Jacquet, Andre Elson, Matthew Gaffin, and Max Gale. Lasted 1 season.
Made by the producers of Simon & Simon, it actually had a War Games movie feel to it. Had some intelligent scripts, but was up against ABC's The Fall Guy and NBC's Real People.
The Yellow Rose, NBC. Nighttime soap opera involving the Yellow Rose, a 200,000-acre ranch in Texas operated by the children of the founder Wade Champion, his sons Roy and Quisto, and his 29-year-old widow Colleen run the ranch when they are not fighting each other. Starring Sam Elliott, Sybil Shepherd, David Soul, Edward Albert, Noah Beery Jr., Ken Curtis, Tom Shanley, Michelle Bennett, and Chuck Connors. All that acting firepower lasted just 1 season.
One of the things you might have noticed in this issue was just how few new shows CBS had. That was because their lineup was solid and they didn't have to work so hard in 1983. The high-concept shows on NBC were actually one of Brandon Tartikoff's trademarks. Didn't do so well in '83. But you can't fault the guy for trying. What do you think of TV Guide's fall 1983 lineup? Did you see any of these shows? Leave a comment below. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.